The Cell Saga is possibly the most revered arc in all of Dragon Ball, to the point where it's often called Toriyama's magnum opus. And while I do agree that it has a few hiccups that can damper the reader's experience, there's no doubt that back in 1992, Toriyama pushed himself very, very far. The writing was ambitious, and it took our beloved characters and put them in uncomfortable situations. It also continued the theme of deep existential development that was introduced in the Frieza Saga. There's an underlying message here about fathers and sons, where the sons lack wisdom and the fathers lack potential, and it's beautifully done here. Of course, with the development of these themes comes a foil to the main cast. This character will come in the form of a villain, Cell, probably being one of the more enigmatic villains in the Dragon Ball franchise. His development as a character has genuine uniqueness to it, as we witness every major decision he makes drastically change the outcome of the story. And conversely, the main character is granting him the tools in which he can change said outcomes. The heroes bounce off of him so naturally that sometimes you don't even notice the similarities between them and how he behaves. This is because he has the cells of the Z Fighters tracing as far back as early Dragon Ball, hence the name Cell. His connection to the main characters is what drives this unique narrative forward. Cell belongs in a family of androids created by Dr. Gero. What sets him apart from the others is that he's a bio-android, containing all the DNA of the Z Fighters including Frieza and King Cold. His primary goal is to track down his sibling androids 17 and 18 and absorb them so he can achieve his perfect form. But of course, it wasn't going to be that easy though. Unfortunately, he was born in a timeline where androids 17 and 18 laid waste to the world and was stopped by future Trunks. This forced Cell to kill Trunks and take his time machine to seek out the androids in the past. Here in the past, he would burrow underground for 4 years until he can grow back into his adult humanoid form. Once his metamorphosis was complete, he still feared that he didn't have enough power to forcibly absorb the androids. So to increase his strength, he decided to exterminate several nearby towns, absorbing all of the inhabitants. Unbeknownst to Cell, Kami had witnessed his arrival to the present, making his presence known. It's at this point where we would get our first look at Cell, during the aftermath of Ginger Town's extinction. Something of note here that I really love is Cell's design. Toriyama went through a multitude of different sketches figuring out how he should look, but in the end they didn't even settle on this look. But I particularly liked how he's introduced as a freak of nature, coming from Piccolo's mouth of course. It's also here where it's revealed that Cell encompasses all the DNA of the main characters, further complexing the story and adding more depth to Cell's mystique. There's several points in the story where reaching his goal becomes increasingly more difficult. He has to outsmart and maneuver around each individual character to take advantage of their weaknesses. Luckily for him, thanks to his DNA, he's able to adhere to his nature and get into the likeness of being a Saiyan, exhibiting traits like pride, aggression, and overall resilience throughout the arc. One of the more notable and controversial instances of this is when he convinces Vegeta to let him absorb Android 18. I know a lot of people criticize moments like these, but it makes sense narratively for Goku and Vegeta to act the way that they do. I have to give major props to Toriyama for keeping the story and characters somewhat cohesive while having to deal with subplots that change constantly. But back to Cell. During the arc, he's able to toy with Trunks easily by attacking his mind and showing how weak he actually is. He's able to manipulate Vegeta by appealing to his egotistical side, and he's even able to act as a complete foil to Goku, which I think is one of the best examples of an evil contrast to a protagonist. We've had a lot of evil Gokus in Dragon Ball, Turles, Goku Black, and even Raditz to a degree. But I feel that Cell was the perfect example of trying to contrast the character of Goku. Up until this point, Goku has always been a character that was carefree and loved a good fight. That much doesn't need to be explained. But Cell gives us a delve into what a real evil Goku might be like. When Cell reaches his perfect form, Trunks tells him that Goku is training to defeat him, and this in turn convinces Cell to host a tournament to see who's the strongest, announcing it on live TV. He obviously did this to prove his superiority over the world, and when the Cell games begin, and so does the fate of the universe, all the Z Fighters watch in terror, while Goku and Cell are the only ones that seem to be enjoying themselves, and sort of seem to be casual about the whole affair. I mean, the whole venue is a tournament. It couldn't be more obvious that these two are one and the same. They're in an environment that they love. The theming is great here, and on the topic of theming, I want to bring up the Saiyan Saga since it's important here. The themes that were present in the Saiyan Saga, such as hard work and consistency, are still present here in the Cell arc, the only difference being intellect being added into the mix. Goku believes that with hard work, even the elite can be surpassed. while Vegeta thought he was inherently better because he was an elite. Fast forward a bit and Goku shows a great degree of intelligence here in the Cell Saga. Cell thinks he's superior to everyone and refers to himself as perfection, or the perfect being, and that he simply cannot be defeated. Goku plays this situation smart by training Gohan to become stronger than himself. This in turn makes Gohan stronger than Cell, since Goku and Cell are the same in a sense. This may be a reach, but I think this is what Toriyama was going for. He intentionally wanted to make Gohan the strongest character by surpassing all the Z fighters, which Cell was modeled after. Gohan comes in and takes the crown by being able to defeat Cell because of this theme at play. Without Goku's intelligence and being able to train Gohan in the way that he did, as well as obtaining Super Saiyan Grade 4, there probably wouldn't even been a way to defeat Cell. Especially since no one had reached the level of a Super Saiyan 2 and no one has surpassed the story's current limits of power. When Cell is overpowered by Gohan, he gets angry and he threatens to blow up the planet right then and there. This is him exhibiting the traits of Frieza, reminiscent of when Goku overpowered him back on Namek. This is what makes Cell so interesting, because in each act of the story we see different parts of his DNA expressed dependent on the interactions of the characters. When he meets Piccolo, both of them utilize their cunning in keen ways to get the advantage. When he fights Vegeta, he's very prideful and explains that he will explicitly become more powerful if he's allowed to transform. When he fights Goku, they are completely at even play, despite Goku saying that he'd be no match for Cell. If we didn't know any better, we'd assume that Goku would win here, but he didn't. Cell was dealt a bad hand by being born into a future with no androids, but he played his cards right to achieve perfection. All of this is to say that despite Cell losing in the end to Gohan, he displayed an incredible amount of vice, intelligence, and trickery to get his way. Ever since his first appearance on screen, all the characters didn't have a clue to what step to take next because of the sheer unpredictability of the foe that they're up against. He struck fear into the likes of Goku and even Trunks, who had the strict advantage of coming from the future and being able to predict certain events, which backfired immensely, since he's the reason that Cell even exists in the present. He forced the main cast to get external means of training to even stand a chance to his power, which might not even been guaranteed in the end. He could have killed Gohan before he tapped into his potential that was foreseen, instead of letting his pride get to him, of course. This is a story about gambles, and every character took a gamble in the end. And while Goku's trust in his son's abilities did come out on top, I can't help but think that if Cell took some of the situations more seriously, he could have seriously caused some trouble, especially with the knowledge that they were training in preparation for the Cell games. I briefly mentioned how I thought Cell was an enigmatic villain. He is. And while I do prefer Frieza over him, I would be hard pressed to say that during the creation of this video, he didn't make an impression on me. Going back to read the manga and doing my research, I found myself fascinated at the story Toriyama was able to interpret with Cell. I love the way that the Z Fighters interacted with him, as well as his presence and how he affected the plot. It's all amazing, and I appreciate the level of detail that was on display for 63 chapters. If you like this episode of Character Code, like and subscribe, and let me know what other characters you'd like to see featured in the series. Till next time.